Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video about what's been going on and how things are going to be moving into the future. Just off the rip, no script today, so I'm just going to tell you about my thoughts and feelings about what I've been doing so far and the things that are probably going to be changing going into the future. And I promise it's positive, at least I think it's going to be positive for this channel. I'm not too sure. YouTube is a very weird place. It's not as organic and catered to people's interests as much as it used to be, and being somebody who has so many different interests, it's hard not to post multiple different types of videos with different styles, but also about different topics altogether. It almost feels like YouTube actually penalizes that. They want the same thing over and over again, so the algorithm knows what to boost. It actually categorizes not only your videos but your whole channel into something that it recognizes as, say, like a Ghost of War channel or a VR channel. Being a multi-game channel or a variety streamer on YouTube is actually so ridiculously hard to do these days, and the people that actually do that are such outliers, and they're outliers for good reason. Like they make great content. Like you have that Badger guy and you have Smitty, you know, like people like that, right? Like they know how to make great content no matter what they do, so YouTube kind of sees them as a variety streamer, but that is hard to do as a new creator. And like I said, I have so many different interests and it's hard to translate my interests to you guys properly because of YouTube's algorithm. But I want to make this video as a record to sum up my interests into this channel so you guys are aware of what you're actually seeing, and that the interests that go into this channel are actually going to be related. But I do have so many interests. I have so many interests that I'm actually pushing out a completely separate channel about music reviews. We actually, me and a buddy of mine, an old bandmate of mine, will do weekly reviews of a specific album or two albums that we're going to listen to through the week, and we're going to talk about the album, we're going to talk about art, we're going to talk about life. So that will be a completely different channel because it has nothing to do with gaming, so that actually makes sense. But for this channel, I want to spread out a little bit more variety, but related variety in ways that people might not understand, because delving into this stuff actually is very separate but very related. For example, I started out with Battlefield being like a big game that I really love, Battlefield 4 being a game that I probably put more hours in than any other game, and then I moved on to getting a PC and I started playing Tarkov, and Tarkov really expanded my knowledge of what games could be, and then I started playing Stalker and some other extraction shooters, and seeing how many games are copying each other, such as games as prominent as Call of Duty doing DMZ with the extraction shooters and not doing well with it, and games like Cycle Frontier coming out, and I wasn't like a huge fan of that, and just watching all these games do their thing. And then I jumped into the Stalker series, and it wasn't until I jumped into Stalker when I realized that all of these games relate way more than people realize. And I'm a big believer of understanding your roots, understanding where things come from, especially when it comes from an artistic standpoint. And people need to understand that Escape from Tarkov didn't just come from Escape from Tarkov. No great ideas are actually original, at least not completely, right? Not many people realize, I mean, a lot of people do, but not many people do at the same time, is that Tarkov was highly influenced by Stalker. In fact, that game was basically made because of Stalker and DayZ. What the developers behind Escape from Tarkov were originally trying to do was actually, if with anybody who's familiar with Stalker, it's got maps, they're massive, and anybody who's familiar with Stalker is that same thing. They have fairly decent sized maps where you can travel in between them. What Tarkov was trying to do is actually make an amalgamation of like DayZ and Stalker in a hardcore military simulation way. So just stick around for this rant, because I'm actually going to get to my point, because this channel is a Ghost of War eccentric channel, and the reason I'm explaining this is because obviously Ghost of War is directly inspired by Escape from Tarkov. In fact, it's essentially a VR carbon copy of Escape from Tarkov, so that's why I'm explaining all this for you right now, but I digress. So let me go back to Tarkov being inspired by Stalker. Stalker was a hardcore survival military shooter with aspects of a persistent world and extraction elements. It was one of the first games, I believe, that had like lean peeking and more tactical first-person shooter aspects involved in the game. And like I said, you could travel in between maps because, of course, it's a game from 2007. It's a very old, shabby type game, so they couldn't have this big persistent entire world. They just had persistent maps where you could travel in between them. Tarkov adopted a similar thing. They wanted it to be more like DayZ, where the maps would all be conjoined into this giant massive world where you could just free roam and do like missions and do PvE and PvP and just have this big like open world, kind of like what Gray Zone Warfare is doing right now. Actually, Gray Zone Warfare is actually realizing Tarkov's like original idea of doing this sort of thing. And Gray Zone Warfare, by the way, is fully inspired by Stalker as well. So Escape from Tarkov decided to make this beta version of this DayZ Stalker amalgamation by having, you know, the same types of maps Stalker did, where you could travel in between them, except add an extraction element to it, where you had to get out of the raid at a certain amount of time. You had a bunker that you could go back to. This was all for beta testing, but the extraction thing really caught on. Having timed raids wasn't a thing they were initially intending to do, but this was an aspect about the game that really caught on, people really liked, so they kept it as one of the main features in Escape from Tarkov, even though they're going to have an Escape from Tarkov mode where it won't necessarily be that way. But that's for later thought. That's for 1.0 release, which is who the fuck knows when that's going to be. So of course, from Escape from Tarkov and all of the crazy features it mostly pioneered, even though, you know, Stalker walked so Tarkov could run, so we could have all of these other games. Long story coming to a short story, we got Ghost of Tabor, which, you know, then birthed this channel here. Ghost of Tabor being a copy of Tarkov with the raids being timed, and you have to extract, and you have a bunker, you have loot, things like that. The reason I had to tell you this, you know, long spiel about how all these games are highly related is because Stalker 2 is coming out in like a few days. Now, I am a fan of the old series. I never played like the OG games, but I did play like the Stalker Anomaly mod. I'm a huge fan of the concept of Stalker. I think the story is incredible. I'm a big lore guy. So the reason I'm making this video is because I'm going to be playing a lot of Stalker 2. The game looks extremely impressive. If the game doesn't ultimately let us down, which unfortunately is a common theme in game development these days, I will be spending a lot of time in Stalker 2. And this is a game that has its roots embedded in everything we love these days. Many of these same developers worked on the OG Stalker series that birthed all of these games that I talk about on this channel, that has inspired everything we love about video games these days. High risk, high reward, high octane, adrenaline inducing games such as extraction shooters, which I just love so much. Stalker is even more special in this way because of its lore, because of its open-ended storytelling. Stalker represents so much more than persistent worlds and hardcore military features in a video game. It represents not only open-ended gameplay, but open-ended storytelling in its lore, with you being a mercenary that enters a zone that's not necessarily a good guy, but isn't necessarily a bad guy, having to approach all of these situations and factions in a morally convoluted way just to survive, just to stay ahead, and to make some gains within this open-ended, persistent world where things happen not because of you, but despite of you and in spite of you. If I got those words right, sorry, I'm a bit of a dumbass, but you know what I mean. Stalker is one of those games that it wasn't just the functions that inspired all the games that we know and love today. It's the storytelling and it's the symbolism of open-ended gameplay mixed with the story that breathes life into the game that you're playing. You make your own choices, and Stalker has always been the thing that tests your moral boundaries, and Tarkov's been the same way, especially when they added VoIP, and VoIP being such a big feature, the proximity chat. Do you team up with the guy? Do you betray him? You have to make moral decisions about, and that's pretty much why we love these games. We're making our own rules for ourselves. It's a game that's fun, that we can make our own decisions, and they're heavy decisions. They weigh heavily. Like, you could lose stuff, you could lose your time in the game, lose your progression if you make the wrong choices. So maybe killing that guy that you teamed up with just so you could get out of a tight spot, it's going to feel bad, but you survived, you know? So like, decision making like that and implementing them properly in art is one of the most impressive things in my mind. I think video games are one of the most cool things in media, and I think we're still very early when it comes to actually exploring this media, and extraction shooters scratch that surface for me. They are one of those pieces of art that put the keys in your hands and says, look, this has real life consequences. And the reason that works so well within a art form is because good art, and the better it is, and I've said this before, the better the art is, the better the art is at reflecting real life in a meaningful way. That's why you have great works of art, because they actually translate real life in such a meaningful and impactful way. And that's where you get all the different genres of art. You know, when you're talking about painting, it's like impressionism and like all the other forms of painting, you know, they have their own way ways of mirroring real life to you in a medium that you or your specific brain likes the most, right? So for a lot of us, that's video games and different types of video games, such as extraction shooters, typically for this channel. Now, what's going to change in this channel that I'm talking about is that since I'm going to be playing so much Stalker 2, because I do think it's going to be one of the most important things to happen in single player games in a very long time. I could be wrong and the game could be total shit, but I've seen a lot about it. The reviews of everybody playing it have been pretty well over the top positive, which is a lot more than I can say for most AAA games these days. And after watching hours of the gameplay, you can see how much absolute attention to detail and love that goes into that game. I'm so blown away and impressed by this game that I think it'll be important for me to play the game and cover it. And that's what brings me to what's going to change in this channel, is that I'm going to be covering this game quite a lot. I want to be playing it. I want to be making content on it. I want to be making story content on it, since, like I said, it is such an open-ended game where you make your own stories, where you make your own decisions. There's a lot you can do within the world of Stalker. I want to talk about its updates. I want to do everything for it that I basically do for Ghost of War. Now, because I am making this change to the channel doesn't mean there's going to be a lack of Ghost of War content. This channel will always be a Ghost of Tabor VR eccentric channel. And just because I'm adding more content and different content to it doesn't mean it's going to take away from the Ghost of War content. I will still be a Ghost of War eccentric channel, like I said, and especially covering the news on the game, because I find that's what's performing the best. I think that's where the gap in the market is for me. So I just want to make sure I'm talking about updates and speculating on wipes, and I want to keep talking about what's coming to the game and what's new. I enjoy exploring their TikTok and their Twitter X accounts and just, seeing what they're doing, what the sentiment is behind the developers, and getting a good understanding behind that game. And I'll always be playing the game a lot too, so I'll be aware of bugs and things like that. At the end of the day, I will not change the Ghost of War content. I will not change the amount of Ghost of War content that you guys are getting, but you're going to be seeing other things. I'm also involved with the developers behind Veil and helping them develop their extraction shooter as well, so you're going to be starting to see a lot more things from them. And I'll also break down the development process from them. There won't be anything that's too hidden, because I'm actually writing a lot of the stuff and making a lot of the stuff for them. So and I'm told that I'm allowed to talk about whatever I'm working on, which is basically the entire gameplay loop and what we're going to be doing and when testing is going to be. Like, you guys are going to get the nitty gritty on all that, unless I hear differently. And if I do hear differently, I will make a video about it. That would be understandable. I know games need certain things to be under wraps and shit like that, but I haven't been told any of that yet. I just can't talk about what the other developers are doing, just what I'm doing. So you'll hear all about that on this channel as that develops. So long story short, there's going to be a lot more about Veil. There's going to be the same amount of content about Ghost of War. I'm sorry it hasn't been as much, but nothing's been going on with Ghost of War. They've just been cooking away. I believe those guys are just having their heads down, cooking hard. They got a complete mission rehaul coming out. They got a new map. The game's going to change completely. There's going to be a lot of things that are coming to that game. There just hasn't been much to report on it. I've heard a few things here and there, seen some extra Twitter posts about some leaks about the map, and yes, I made videos about that, but that's why there hasn't been as much Ghost of War content, because there hasn't been as much to report, and I want to be more of like a news channel for them. But yes, what's going to be changing? Okay, this is my vision for this channel. I want to cover extraction shooters that I am particularly interested in overall. Delta Force was something that was in closed beta, it was in closed alpha, closed beta, or whatever. It was an open beta. I played both of them, and it's coming out in December 10th. I'm going to be playing Delta Force quite a lot. Not only their battlefield mode, but especially their extraction shooter mode. I think they did an extremely good job at their own take of the extraction mode. There hasn't been a successful take at the extraction mode that hasn't directly copied Tarkov ever at all. Psycho Frontier tried it. They had a good reception, but they ultimately failed and could not retain the player base. Delta Force is actually doing something different, more of a battlefield, I wouldn't say arcade shooter vibe, but more of an arcade shooter than Tarkov, that's for sure. And they are actually doing a good job with it, because they have depth, they have a lot of systems in there, they have a really balanced economy, they have a lot of quality of life features. They're doing a good job. I want to be covering that game also, maybe making some content about it. It's a bit more of like a guilty pleasure game for me, so maybe I won't cover it as much. I mean, it does still have a lot of like generic aspects about it, and it's not a great storytelling game. Unfortunately, it's just a very fun, pleasant extraction shooter to be playing. Anyway, but I digress again. So the overall vision for the channel, I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a hard guy to follow, but the overall vision for the channel. Okay, let's get into it. Stalker. First and foremost, I'm going to go in chronological order of the games that started this whole shebang, which is the Stalker series. Stalker 2. right? Covering the game. I'm going to be posting gameplay footage. I'm going to be doing story things if it's an interesting game. It all depends on that, of course. That is going to be an extremely diluted topic, but you know, that's beside the point. Stalker, Tarkov will be coming back into the frame. I take wipes off in between wipes. When I was making Tarkov content, people really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I love Tarkov. Tarkov is going to be a thing I'm going to bring back onto this channel. Lots of Tarkov content, story, news, all that stuff. Thirdly, Ghosts of Tabor. That is not going to change. I might even do more videos on Ghosts of Tabor. I like to work hard. I like to work on my content. I'm just going crazy. I need more stuff to do. So I'm going to continue Ghosts of Tabor content and all the stuff you know and love, which is the news, which is gameplay footage, which is my opinions. I know you guys like hearing me talk shit and just talk about my opinions and talk about what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. That is always going to be a thing. And maybe I'll even do more. I don't want to exhaust that topic. A lot of guys do a video every single day talking about the same shit. I'm not going to do that. This is why I'm looking at adding more to this channel, because I don't want to exhaust just one topic. I want to actually talk about something new. At the end of the day, I want to make a video when there's a video that needs to be made. That's all I want to do. I'm not content farming. I'm not going crazy on this stuff. Fourthly, what are we going to do? Fourthly, Delta Force. Delta Force will be coming into frame possibly. I think at the very least, when it comes to Delta Force, you're going to see me streaming it. All of these games you're going to see me streaming. Stalker 2, you're going to see a lot of streams and content and news and stories, all the stuff that I do. Ghost of War, of course, you're going to see me streaming it all the time. Tarkov, when I get back into that, it's going to be streaming all the time. But Delta Force, I think it's going to be more of a streaming thing that I do, not less of a story thing. It's just a fun, pleasant game. Fun, pleasant games don't have great stories to tell, such as like Tarkov does, right? Tarkov can be a brutal game. Like you can have days or weeks where you're just getting completely shit on. But Delta Force is a fun game, you know? So I'm going to be streaming that because I like playing it. So any game that I enjoy playing that is related to this channel, and that's what I'm trying to do in this conversation, is I'm trying to tie everything and make it related for you guys so you can see like what I'm trying to do. Because again, if I make this channel about one thing, I'm gonna fucking go crazy. I'm gonna lose my mind and just not be able to continue putting out consistent content. Tell me if it's a good idea. Like I feel like I said, YouTube penalizes you for having different interests, and I feel like this interest will be an extraction shooter eccentric or an extraction shooter focus. But at the same time, like I might be doing too many different things. Like I don't know. I want this to be a Ghost of War channel at the end of the day. I love Ghost of War. I love the idea of VR. I think it's going to be the future for everything we do, akin to the internet, like literally being that big of a thing. I think it's going to be that huge. And Ghost of War is, I mean, it's kind of a janky piece of shit right now that looks like a PS1 game, but that will change. You guys should have played Tarkov back in 2017. I didn't start playing it back then, but I've seen footage from it then. It was like a Flash engine game. That thing was a piece of shit. Tarkov looks incredible now. It looks like almost real, and they're changing their engine again in the like near future. It's gonna look amazing. The game's gonna have a lot to do and talk about. It's gonna have a full-fledged story mode. This is why I'm so excited for the future of these games. Tarkov, Stalker, these games are going to change the ecosystem of what we know and love, and that's the types of things I want to be covering here. But just know Ghost of War is not going away. In fact, it's coming back harder and stronger than ever. I just need more work to do. I need more work to do. I love doing YouTube. I started about how many months ago? Probably 16 or 17 months ago. And I've learned so much, like a lot. I started from a complete amateur, and I got into it accepting that I was pretty bad at it and making a lot of mistakes. I made some good friends that have taught me a lot of things along the way, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not giving up. In fact, I'm going to be more persistent than ever. I am the most consistent, hardworking motherfucker you've ever met in your life. I will keep on going. I will not stop. I'm not going to stop. Let me take the time to be a little petty at least. I know that the developers and the moderators over at Ghost of War and their Discord know about me, and I've asked to have a creator role for a long time, and they just never given it to me, and I've been super persistent about it too, but they just have refused to give it to me. I just want to let them know if they are watching this, and I doubt they are at this point, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be extraordinarily persistent. The channel will continue to grow, and I promise you it will. I've got no doubts within myself or this channel or the things I'm doing, so I'm not going anywhere, guys. Like, this is not going away. I'm going to be extremely persistent. I'm going to be pumping out way more content, and I'm going to be doing it for a very long time. So expect me to be around in this ecosystem for a while now. Expect me to be the guy that understands these games, understands the world behind them, understands the magic that makes them happen, because it truly is a special moment for us as gamers. We are in the early stages of extraction shooters. Even though Tarkov's been out 10 years, we just haven't had a good ecosystem of those games. They are still extremely niche, by the way. Battle royales crush extraction shooters like 20-1 in population and popularity. And the fact that we have so little successful games in this space, it is objectively still a very early concept, which is the extraction shooters. That's what makes Ghost of War so exciting, because it's the first one in VR that's actually doing a good job. So big kudos to those developers, and I'm very excited for the future of Ghost of War and just extraction shooters in general, and open-ended storytelling in video games. When you can do that right, story-driven, open-style games such as like DayZ and all the extraction shooters that we know and love, that's where the magic is, and they're hard games to make. Don't get that twisted. These are very difficult games to make because of depth, but that's a good thing, because we as gamers are demanding more. We require more out of the art we love, out of the mediums we love, right? And extraction shooters add that depth just in the gameplay alone, with its downtimes and exciting times. There's always an aspect of danger, and you're always keeping your eye out. Even when you're not fighting, it feels like you're having this mental game with yourself, and there's just so much depth in that and how you think about playing these games, and that's where all that magic comes from, right? And then when you add depth to the story and to the mechanics in the game, it just that's what adds all that decision making and that freedom of expression and freedom of customization that we know and love about these games. It's freedom to express, it's freedom to strategize, it's freedom to show skill, it's freedom to play in any play style that you like, whether you like being a Timmy that rats or being like a Chad that goes crazy. If you're a younger guy who relies more on his skill and his wit to best his opponent, or if you're an older guy like me who actually has more wisdom and more knowledge on how to flank and how to take things slow and how to read a map, like, man, these games are so special in that they speak to every sort of gamer. I think people have a hard time nailing down on what makes these games so good, and it's not just one thing that you can nail down. It's so many things, and that's what's so special about these games, is they do so many different things so well and speak to so many different types of players. And that's what makes me extremely excited about these kind of open-ended extraction-esque type games with realism and depth, right? I think we can all agree on that. I just wanted to let you know, ultimately, to summarize everything, the channel is changing. I'm going to be adding games that I think are related and are within this ecosystem. I think it's hard to conceptualize this ecosystem because it is so young. There's so little games that actually relate to each other or seem like they relate to each other in this ecosystem, but I want to let you know that they do. Stalker being the root of it all. This is where they all came from, was the Stalker series, and the developers are still after it after all these years. And I made a post about this not long ago, is that, like, remember when I said good art reflects life in a meaningful way? Extraction shooters, at the end of the day, they are survival games. You have to survive an extremely difficult environment. Stalker could not express this in any better way. It was the first like hardcore like survival military shooter, and get this, they went through development, a war started in the city where the studio was. Their studio right now, if you look at it, it's blown to shit, like with a Russian bomb. They moved their studio to the Czech Republic, continued developing, and not only that, but the Stalker series has been a cult classic since 2007, and it has been a franchise that has refused to die. It has survived. It has survived a literal war. One of the lead developers died in the Russian-Ukraine war when it first started because he had to go fight. And not only that, but Stalker is based off of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, one of the worst nuclear disasters to ever happen on this planet. It was the worst nuclear disaster to ever happen on the planet. The scale of it was massive. It evacuated an entire city. Many of the people who developed the game, their families were affected by this. People don't understand how close to home, when I say that, how close to home Stalker is to real life. And that's what makes that game so special and so influential, and one of the most groundbreaking pieces of art that I've ever seen happen, and in a medium that I love, and go into a medium that I love just as much, which is virtual reality, and, you know, going into Ghost of War. I don't think many people realize this and the depth of it, and I'm just hoping that I can persuade you when you are watching my channel, help you understand the depth of actually this growing new genre that is in its infancy, that I believe is going to morph into such an incredible thing into the future. We're going to have such different games, and it won't be exactly like Escape from Tarkov. It won't be exactly like Stalker. Stalker. There's going to be new and innovative games that come from this, but just know that the roots all started with Stalker, what these developers have been through. Stalker 2 is an extremely important thing that's about to happen. By the way, it's going to be free on Game Pass. If you have Xbox Game Pass, you can play it there. I believe it's going to be free on console and PC in the Game Pass. The base game itself on Steam is like $80. But guys, like when I saw the gameplay, it's incredible. A few of the things I saw, I was just absolutely mind blown at the love and passion that was put into the game. The guy shoots his gun in a field, right? You know how when you yell in a field in the open when there's no cars, you guys that don't live in the city, you would understand. So you make a loud noise out in the country or in the city, you hear the noise come back to you. It echoes, right? They added that in Stalker. When you're shooting a gun, you hear the shots bounce back to you. It's going to bounce off a tree. It's going to bounce off a building some kilometers away and bounce back to you. They added that. The way they added that was it works. It literally sounds real. The fact that they added that is pure love in the development. We do not see that kind of stuff anymore, especially from AAA gaming. AAA gaming used to have love when it was like Battlefield 4, right? Now we have Stalker. They've put true love into the game. Now they have those gunshot echoes. They have a 60 square kilometer persistent open world, seamless open world map. Oh, and by the way, 60 square kilometers is 15 square kilometers less than the GTA 5 map. It is like 4 to 5 times bigger than Fallout 4's map. But here's the kick. The map is handcrafted by the developers, and in GTA 5 you're driving around in a lot of that map. In Stalker, there's no cars. The whole world is going to be full of stuff to do because the whole place is handcrafted and you need to walk to where you're going. It's a massive map where there will always be danger along your journey and stories to be made. It's one of the most ambitious projects I've seen, one of them for sure, with mutants and zombies and all sorts of different enemy types, because you need that in a single player game, right? Like you can't just have one enemy type in a single player game. It's going to get boring. You need different AI, different ways to strategize on how to defeat this PvE world. It's a hard thing to do. Single player games aren't as interesting as PvP games for me, but Stalker is an exception because it is such a hardcore game that you need to strategize in. You can't just figure out what the AI does and their likeness and then just do the same thing over and over again throughout the game. No, Stalker is completely different. It's going to have so many different environments, so many different creatures and AI to fight, so many different types of missions to do. And the echo on gunshots is one tiny example of many other things I saw in that trailer, and that is the type of love and passion and development that you're going to see in this game. I forget how long this game is in development. 4 years, for a long time. They really pushed on this game to be as best as it could be, and I believe that because they've delayed the game so many times. And when I've seen gameplay footage of it, I'm like, dude, this looks good. Like just release it. And then like the final gameplay footage I saw was of like the gunshots and the echo coming back, and I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. They are trying to make this as perfect as humanly possible. Who delays a game so they can like have that? And I just remembered the second thing that I saw. They have to animate. So when you loot like a scope or like an attachment or even like a grip off of an enemy player, I saw the guy with like an AS Val and he looted the dovetail mounted scope from the body of a player. They have animations of the guy attaching the scope onto the gun. You guys don't realize like how crazy that is. Tarkov has animations for almost everything, but they haven't added animations to adding attachments in the game. Your guy just like lowers the weapon and you can hear some clicking, and then he pops the weapon back up and the attachments on it. In Stalker, it shows the guy putting a red dot on, putting a dovetail on, putting a grip on. Like to animate those things into the game, it's not necessary, but it's an awesome thing to have. And because they have it in there, it's a lot of work to actually put all that stuff in there, and it's not necessary. So like the love that's going into this game, you guys, it's actually mind-blowing. So yes, you're gonna see a lot of content on it. I'm very excited about it. I know you guys think I'm talking out of my ass and I'm just like hyping up all these crazy games. It could suck, right? Like, these few aspects they could have put in there and then the rest of the game could suck. Who knows, right? I'm making this video because of Stalker 2's release, and I'm very excited about the game, and I just want to cover more games like it because I believe the ecosystem is in its infancy and growing. I believe we're in a beginner stage. Sooner or later we're going to get to an intermediate stage, especially with Delta Force, and when it does a full release. It's coming out in like a open beta. It's not a full release game when it comes out on December 10th, but once that game really comes out and it's something that's different and it proves itself, I believe this ecosystem won't be in a beginner phase, but stepping on the toes of intermediate, and I think we're just going to go from there and it get to like an extremely advanced phase, especially when the technology catches up, because the depth of these types of games and the depth that these games deserve definitely need more technology. Not everybody everybody's going to be able to run them. And especially when you really put your imagination to it, we're going to need even better computers in the future, because these games are going to be so open-ended and give you so many technical options on how you play them. Anyway, guys, that's my rant for today. I'm so impressed if you stuck around for that whole thing. Now you understand where I'm coming from and like what these games mean to me and what these games kind of mean to the ecosystem and to the art form of video games, right? This is what I want to cover on this channel. I hope I don't get burned by it. I hope I'm not seen as a variety channel. I don't want to do variety content. I do want to have a focus and a niche. I think that's important so we don't confuse things. I also don't want to stick to like a singular thing, which is news or like news for a small VR game. You know, I get it. I think it would work well if I did that way, but I feel like that's lazy and I just have so much more I want to do. I'm going to be releasing more channels and there's just going to be so much to do. There's so much work to cover, and I want to at least pack an ecosystem of extraction shooters and hardcore military shooters within a channel, and ones that I think relate. Maybe I have too much foresight for it right now. Maybe I'm seeing too much into it, but at the same time, these games do sit in a very pretty package for me, and I believe they all relate in a very important way. So I want to add them to the channel. At the end of the day, you're going to see more Ghost of War content than anything. Get ready for Stalker, get ready for Delta Force, and get ready for Tarkov especially. Once I do get back into the game, you're going to be seeing me play that game a lot, probably sink a ton of hours into it. And the Tarkov stuff did do well when I was doing it a lot and pushing out videos and stuff, and it's been a great experience. I've learned a lot from YouTube and doing this kind of work, so expect a lot more. I ain't going anywhere. That's that's my warning to the world, is that, oh man, I'm gonna be in your face everywhere. I know how to promote myself. I know how to network. You're gonna be hearing a lot from me in the future. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to join the Discord in the description section down below, please do so. You can talk to me directly. I will talk to everybody that messaged me. I like to say hello. I like to talk about extraction shooters and your ideas for video games. I've talked to YouTubers and people who are developing games, and I've gotten involved with studios. It's been such a great time, so please give me a shout out. Put a comment in the comment section down below. I will reply to everybody, and if you stuck around this long, holy shit, I don't know what's wrong with you. You must be as crazy as I am. So thank you very much. Hit the subscribe button, please. I need it. It helps me out being the small channel that I am, and definitely hit the like button. It's free. It really helps me out. It helps the algorithm out. Like I said, I'm gonna network like crazy. I'm pushing this shit. I'm trying to work from home, people. I'm trying to work from home, okay? All right, well, thank you very much again, and have yourselves a very nice day. We'll see you again.